until the very end. And I mean, I this is straight away goes down and it's definitely great. Not good.
Beautiful. All right, before we get really started, let me just do a sound check. Beautiful. All right, before we get really started, let me just do a sound check. Beautiful. Sound check over. Let me plug in this sound check device. I'm gonna stop, smile, take a moment, because it's been a while, right? It's been a while. All right, hold on. One more sound check. This happens when you're self-producing and self-doing everything yourself. You just want to make sure everything is good, right? So everything's good. Fly? There's a fly in here. But other than that, seems like everything is good. One more test. Good. Fly? There's a fly. All right. The reason why I'm taking my time and doing, taking this moment to savor the sentence has been a while. I think our last Manic Music Media Monday was in January. So it's been nearly, 8 months since we have done this. And it didn't stop the consumption that was going on. It also didn't stop the creation that was going on, right? Like if you follow my YouTube channels, you'll see that plenty of other things have dropped in the meantime. If you follow the work that I do with my company, The Cool Company, you'll see that we have actually been going hard on Cool Pro Wrestling, the new wrestling brand that we started, and Cause the Silent Piece Said So, which is my wrestling content for that brand, has been going great. So it's not like I haven't been around, but I have not been streaming as much, and I have not done this. But it was a nice hiatus. I'm not mad at it. But we're back at it. We're manic. We're going to talk about some media. We're going to talk about some music. Today's episode is going to be similar to how, my favorite conversations with my favorite people go. It's going to be jam-packed with a lot of information that we are going to start with and that we are also not going to finish because we just skip around everywhere. It's going to be a lot of unfact-checked opinions. Yeah, right? First Manic Music Media Monday in 8 months. But I should also explain. So before I decided to take the hiatus and to take a few months off, to really to just work on other things, especially now that I knew how this worked. I knew this worked. I knew at any moment I could flip the switch back on. in that time, before I decided to take the hiatus, I had already started working and I had already started planning what the Manic Music Media Monday for February was going to look like. So today's going to be interesting because not only am I giving my opinion on a lot of things, not only am I trying to go over the last 8 months of content, which I'm surely not going to remember everything, but I'm also going to be looking over at some of the writing and some of the things that I had in place. So we're going to get a bit of um, my initial reaction versus what I feel about it now. Um, and with that included into the past 8 months, it's really going to be a test on not only do I remember all of these things, but as a fan, as a consumer, what is the lasting effect of all of these pieces? And what is the lasting effect of consuming all of these things? I, when I make the list for what these episodes are going to look like, and when I look at the yearly things that I've consumed, I'm like, there's so much going on. And just going back and looking at things from February, I'm realizing if I didn't write this down, I would have never remembered that that show not only happened this year, but that that show happened at all. So it is also be a nice test on what this streaming consumption place in society, place in the world, place in the modern era that we are in. What does it mean? Is it smart? Is it ridiculous? It's a bit of both. What I do know is that it makes a lot of money for a lot of people, and that's probably what's most important. Before we really start diving into things, let's also take the time to look at. I was so close. I thought I was gonna get it this time, but I didn't. The watch list. I realize it's a bit harder to read this week. The reason why that is because, and I guess we can get into a bit of household cleaning while we do this. The Manic Music Media Watchlist is actually available on Patreon now. It's available on the Cool Co by Switch Patreon, which not only we talk about art, which is not only we talk about a lot of other digital creation, it's also home to Cool Mag, which is a new digital watch magazine that I've been working on for the past few months. Part of the reason why Manic Music Media is there. Not only so there's a Cool Mag is a weekly watch list. There's a list. So Manic Music Media is really about the month of content, basically on all of the big networks. We're talking Apple TV, we're talking HBO, we're talking Showtime, Hulu. But the weekly watch lists that go into Cool Mag are weekly things that are happening mostly on YouTube. Just smaller, independent, for the most part, small business companies. There's also a Cool Pro Wrestling section part of it, which I'm very proud of. And the best part about Cool Mag is that on a weekly basis, we're collecting all of this content. But once a month, we drop the full edition of it, which has all of the week's content put together, but it also has images. And as we keep expanding, we'll have more editorials and we'll have more original content that's part of it. And it also becomes a nice promotional method for not only Manic Music Media Monday, but for all the rest of the content that I do, for all of the rest of the content that I'm doing with the Cool Company. So everything is really blending in together, and that's not what we are here for. But I am Tyler Switch Dow. That P is silent. Thank you for your time today. Before we get into things, just make sure you follow me on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, if you're so obliged by all of the things I do. Also, check out our music. The last music release I put out was quite a while ago, but that's because I've been working on a new album that we are making strides with. We won't get into that too much today, because that's not what this place is for, but I'm excited about it. I am excited about it. Let's just leave it at that. Also, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Also, make sure you follow on Twitch. And follow on all digital streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, anything else. And make sure you check out the Cool Company. We do a lot of cool things. Cool Magazine, as I already commented. Cool Pro Wrestling, as I already said. Cause Silent Peace Head Show, my wrestling podcast and commentary. But we also do Saturday Morning Synopsis, which is an interview podcast show with Nia Fields and myself. And we have an archive of the Arsonist Sessions, which is a producer meetup show that was created by First Love Music, my business partner at my music studio, Studio 91. And you can also check Oh My Cool Season 1, which is my vlog series. Season 2 has 1 episode, and there's so much more coming. I do too much. But I need to do it to get it out. And today is another example of a Manic Music Media Monday. Let's get into it. So like I said, just looking at the watch list, it looks a little bit different, but it basically still covers the same things that it always does cover. So I'm going to pull it up for myself as well so we can go over it. We don't really spend too much time on the things that we are currently watching on a weekly basis because it's kind of hard to know what my actual opinion on them are until we finish them, complete them. And why are you giving me so much trouble? I guess because I'm streaming. I'm like, this thing is giving me a hard time as I try to pull up the Manic Music Media Monday list. I have it here, but it's so small. I want a nice, bigger version of it. I just want it big. Give it to me, give it to me. Give me big, give me big, oh, I have it actually right here. It was already open. So, weekly watch list. On Sundays, we're watching Vice. Actually, that's not true anymore. I have to correct that. Vice season 3 on Showtime just ended. Always a great documentary show. Keeps you updated on things that are going on right now. But Vice actually just ended. That should be in the memorial section. The Circus just came back, which is my favorite political show on television. It's actually one of my favorite shows on television. Stylized, fashion, moves quick. The main guy, Heilman, swaggy, older white guy, bald as a cue ball. They always make sure that they show his fly kicks as he's walking by, his cool sunglasses. On this last episode, he was there with Kamala Harris, and he was chill with her, was Sano with her, but he held her to the fire a little bit too, which is kind of cool. Homie with the hat, I can't remember right now. He's dope. They're all dope. Alex Wagner just left because she went to MSNBC. Good for her. She did bring something to the show that I think it's missing, but I can't wait to see where they come back up with it. House of the Dragon. I didn't think a new Game of Thrones show was necessary. I understood why they were doing it, but I feel like if you saw what happened with Walking Dead, you saw how easily things can be oversaturated and how they can ruin themselves. They can kill their own buzz. And with the way that Game of Thrones ended, I understand that these series were already in development before the show even ended. But with the way Game of Thrones ended, you expected people to have such a negative view on it that just at the thought of the creation of a new show, that we would turn away. But nah, Sano, it is fire. It is so good. Oh my, episodes have made me gross. Episodes have made me feel disgusted. The emotions that it puts me through. Bueno, Matt Smith, great job. The young girls did a great job. Super creative, the decision to switch the characters halfway through so you can cover this big story. House of Dragon is great. I can't wait till the season is over. Rick and Morty, I actually haven't even watched this week's episode. I keep forgetting it's on. Honestly, it's because the Adult Swim app doesn't exist on my Xbox. So the way I have to watch it is I have to cast it from my iPad to my TV. So I'm not even doing it on my main TV. I'm doing it on the backup TV. So it changes my whole environment and my enjoyment of the show. How I have to watch it. Why is there not an Adult Swim Xbox and PlayStation app? I don't mean to come on these Manic Music Media Mondays on the last Monday of every month. and bash an app every time. And this time I'm actually bashing the lack thereof an app. Technically, I can go on the browser of the Xbox and watch it. This is a factual statement. Technically, you could just have an app too. And then you have last week tonight, as always. Let's buzz through this because we have a lot of things to talk about. On Mondays, it's mostly a wrestling day for me. Um, a few YouTube shows come out. We get the first publish of Cool Mag for the week. Tuesdays are also wrestling shows. Andor just started last week. Star Wars Disney Plus episode. All I'm going to say about it right now is this is the Star Wars that I want to see, that I want to consume. It's why Star Wars Episode 8 was so great. I need more of it. Also a wrestling day for me. On Thursdays we get She-Hulk, which has been very fun and enjoyable. Episodes are so short. Sometimes I wish they dropped 2 at the same time, but still enjoyable, still fun. Atlanta, we're on its last season. If I had continued on Manic Music Media Monday number 7 in February, I would have been talking about the last season of Atlanta. But I really like that, even though they made us wait so long for another season, these two have been basically back to back. So fun. Can't wait to talk about it more as it's over. On Fridays, we have C, which is also on its final season. And actually, I could put C on a Thursday list because Apple TV always does this thing where they drop the episode like 3 or 4 hours. Actually, I don't even know what time it drops, but I know by the time I get home, whether that's 7 p.m., whether that's maybe not 7 p.m., but around 9 p.m., the episode is on. It's up and it's available for me to watch, and it's not the only show that Apple TV has done that. So kudos to them for that. Just giving me easy access to it. I guess as a streaming company, you don't have to put your numbers down, so that's why they get away with it. But every company could do that. HBO used to do it on holiday weekends where they would drop the episode 3 days early and give it to you on Friday so that at least you could still watch it and not have to worry about watching it on Sunday. I think it's a great idea. I think it's just, if we're going to have this relationship where I'm giving you money on a monthly basis, treat me good. Treat a young nigga good. You know what I mean? Like, making a young nigga feel good, in my opinion. Then we have Rings of Power, which is Lord of the Rings show. It's very interesting that Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones is happening at the same time because they're both that kind of fantastical fantasy worlds, even though they are very different. And they're happening at the same time. One is kind of very polished, one is very pop, one is very grunge, and one very metal and dirty. And maybe people are kind of shitting on Rings of Power, I'm hearing, but it stands up for itself. The money that they've put into the show clearly shows itself. And it is a good storyline. If you're into Lord of the Rings, I feel like it lives up to the Lord of the Rings, at least the Peter Jackson and the Hobbit movies. Then Fridays, we get more wrestling, and then we get Real Time with Bill Maher, which is also more political stuff. I have nothing more to say about it. It's good for me to watch. Do I promote it? Maybe. Last current series that I'm really going to talk about is Epic Adventures with Birdie Gregory, which is a adventure, the show about an explorer. Birdie Gregory is the dude's name who has epic adventures. One episode, he went to go shoot humpback whales, but he had to go to Antarctica, and there's this whole, just the journey of it is incredible. And it's a National Geographic show. It's very much in line with National Geographic, but maybe it's just me, being that the fact that I don't live in a house with cable and I have it for over 5 years, I forgot shows like this exist, or at least not. I didn't forget that they exist, but I at least forgot how they work. And I also it never dawned on me how they would modernize. And now they're talking about the drones that they're using. Now that they're talking about the equipment that they're using, and it's great. I've only watched 2 of them, and part of the reason that is yes, I want to slowly consume them, which is actually the exact opposite of how I feel about most things, because I just want to gobble it down. If you haven't seen Manic Music Media Monday number 5, Overconsumption at its finest, I very much get into that. But it's also, I get so into it and so anxious and so up and down with it that I have to turn off everything and just focus on that. And I haven't had the hours to do that for 45 minutes for a few weeks, to just really, really shut down. I mean, I do that for almost all of the shows that I've listed. Um, but this is kind of on its own box. It's out of its own schedule. So because it can be so flexible, I haven't been able to just take the time and to make the structure and create for it. 2 specials that we're going to get into, even though these kind of should be part of the memorial section, but they are really add-ons to other things, is the Obi Wan Kenobi story, which was, oh, what was it called? I think it was A Jedi's Return, which is the Disney Plus special that they did. And it's basically just the behind-the-scenes DVD featurette that you would have gotten if DVDs still existed. But they're so good. There's like the second one I'm going to talk about, Marvel Studio Assembled, which is basically the same thing, making Thor Love and Thunder. I liked it more than I liked actual Love and Thunder, the movie. Spoiler. Did we talk about Thor? I guess we have to, yeah. It came out in the last few months. Spoiler. The movie was alright. A little too goofy. A little bit too campy. Also, just all of the things that should hold weight and that should hold value, that really made you wonder. Disney kind of just skips over these days. They're just like, we don't really want to explain that, and they just move on. Eternals did the same thing. Doctor Strange also did the same thing. But these Disney specials, these Disney Plus specials have been, they make me fall in love with the film even more. They make me fall in love with the characters. Such a smart idea to do, and made so well. When we return, we'll be getting into the memorial section. We got a lot of things to get into, so we just can't focus on everything. Gotta skip over some things, but we got a lot to talk about. We'll be back. It's a Manic Monday. It's a Manic Monday. It's a Manic Monday. It's a Manic Monday. Yeah, it's a Manic Monday. Ridiculous. Absolutely, absolutely ridiculous. All right, so now we're gonna dive into the memorial section of today. And I, in a way, broke it down because we're getting into so much. I broke it down by. I am not speaking. I am just not telling. We're in here to speak. And the one thing that I'm not doing is speaking. So why don't I speak? So why don't I speak? So I broke them down into the different streaming platforms. So these are not going to be in a timely basis. It's going to be. Yeah, we're going to figure it out. Let's just take it as it is. Let's just take it as it is. So I want to start off by reading what I wrote about Boba Fett. Just because I want to know if the way I feel about the show now is either stronger or strong less or less strong than how I felt about it before. So what I wrote about Book of Boba Fett, the Disney Plus streaming, was remember our conversation about nostalgia? This show may be the curse of it. That's before I even give an opinion on it. Boba Fett has been so beloved to so many people for so long based on aesthetics. Now the question is really getting to know him what we needed? Also, is reanalyzing other characters that we've seen for so long in a new light necessary? Honestly, still reading. I think the answer is both. The beauty and pleasure of these streaming services is that they can commit more to the diehard fans. Diehard fans are also the hardest to please. And on the same hand, these shows also isolate the casuals. Oh, wait, let me get back. The beauty and pleasure of these streaming services is that they can commit more to the diehard fans. Diehard fans are also the hardest to please. And on the same hand, I don't know, excites the casuals who only like these things from afar, from a casual distance. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the cool thing about streaming services is that it gives something for the diehard fans that are really committed to it. And the casuals who kind of only care about it don't necessarily need to watch it. I continued. New tech, new aesthetic, new aesthetics, 80s montages and motorcycles. It's almost as if I took some Adderall and started brainstorming new Star Wars ideas, which is probably not so different from how the show was actually created. The issue with that is, so much of Star Wars has always felt so legendary and out of reach. When you place it in my hand, I'm not sure if it's as special, which, and this is me speaking now, I do agree with. I continue. Shout out to the new Star Wars tech though. It is cool to see. It did make me realize that part of what I love about Star Wars is that everything is so futuristic, but the tech also has a vintage feel to it. The limitations that the foundation that the movies from the 70s created always worked in its favor for that reason. And then lastly, I give a shout out to Ming-Na Wen, who killed it as Fennec Shan, because Fennec Shan was the shit, even though the series felt like background fodder. So, I just read to you what I felt about Book of Boba Fett, and I do agree with that. I agree with that to an even further extent now that we have just seen the first 3 episodes of Andor, which does what Book of Boba Fett didn't. Because it takes place in a very specific time period, and because we already know what it's working towards, it is forced to bring us to like the deep end right away. And that's what Star Wars is. It is in a galaxy far, far away. Like, we're already in the deep end. And what Book of Boba Fett tried to do was humanize and bring everything to a common ground, which is not what I want for my Star Wars. I want my Star Wars to be out of nowhere. Star Wars is the one show is the one place that a character out of nowhere can just come, swoop in, and save the day. That's why we were perfectly fine with Luke doing it in the end of Mandalorian Season 2. That's what I need for my Star Wars. I need it to be out there. I need it to be planets filled with oceans. I need every creature to be there. I don't need it to be normalized. I don't need it to be grounded. I don't need a Zack Snyder version of Star Wars. And I think that's where Book of Boba Fett failed. Even though it was an enjoyable show, it was cool, but it just had no merit to my life, really. If I didn't watch it, it was no big deal. Another show that failed to me, and this really, really broke my heart, because so I watched Birds of Prey on Channel 11 when that came out. Not only did I watch Birds of Prey, but I think it came out on a Wednesday at 9 p.m. and my bedtime was 9 p.m. My mom would let me stay up for the hour to watch Birds of Prey. When I heard Moon Knight, and this is years later, was going to be, they were thinking about developing it for a show that, in my opinion, would have felt like a Birds of Prey type of show, I was so excited. It didn't matter to me that it was going to be on regular television, just basically just a giant advertisement for 23 episodes, and that all of those shows suck for the most part. I didn't care because I was going to get a Moon Knight show. Then years and years pass and we never get the show. I find out we're getting a Moon Knight show for Disney Plus. So all of the limitations that we would have gotten if it was a CW, Channel 11, UPN 9 type of show were gone. We could get the show that we actually wanted. I was so excited for that. And the show was okay. I'm like the only person I know who didn't like it, but it was... Homie did a great job. Oscar Isaac is a great actor. For me, he's played two bad Marvel characters, which are also two of the greatest. But that whole on a boat, spirit world, friend becoming superhero, like, it was just so cheesy. Also, one of my biggest problems with shows in general is like they're like, we have to go to Egypt, and then the next episode they're just in Egypt. Like, the thing that I love about the MCU is how grounded everything is. Separately, I mean, like, antagonistically from what I want from my Star Wars. The thing I like about the MCU is that we don't go through all of the tropes that the comic book can get away with. Because we are bringing it to the silver screen, there's only so much we can explain. And they explain just about everything that they try to. Sometimes it's a bad explanation, but they try to explain everything. And the thing about Phase 4 is I feel like those explanations are done. We're just in this world. Damn, this is sounding like a negative Manic Music Media Monday, which I try not to be negative on these things. I actually only want to be positive, and I only want to talk about things that make me happy. But we'll get to that. I do think Phase 4 is failing because that's what matters. That's what's so good about the MCU. It's not only the battle, but the 5 minutes after the battle when all of the heroes are standing there together. And what do they say to each other and how do they laugh with each other? I just feel like that's gone. In Moon Knight, we have invisible creatures. Suits just popping out of nowhere. It's just, oh, this god, that god, worlds of god. It's just, come on. And I also think Thor: Love and God Thor, Love and Thunder did very similar. Doctor Strange is in the multiverse, and it did a better job at it. But I think the really incredible thing about Multiverse of Madness is that for me, it's more a Sam Raimi film in the MCU than a MCU Sam Raimi film. You know what I mean? Like when Tim Burton did Alice in Wonderland, it was like Tim Burton doing a Disney movie. The very cool thing and the very probably the most unexpected thing about Doctor Strange was that it was like, oh, Disney, Kevin Feige, Marvel, let Sam Raimi do his type of film all the way into the end. Like I said, I don't want to be negative in these things. So going back on the upper, let me give Disney Plus the props it deserves. Obi Wan, fun show. Not so heavy. That little girl was an amazing actor, and I love Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. He's so good. The storyline between him and Anakin years later still makes me feel something. I still feel very strongly about it. Like it's making me emotional, but I still feel very strongly about it. And then the whole thing with like those Sith sisters and brothers, like I don't follow this Star Wars outer canon that much. I haven't really played that many Star Wars video games except for that really one dope one for the Dreamcast. So that was cool to see. It was dope. I'm not mad at it. It was fun. And another show that I can very much give Disney Plus its props for was Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel does do a bit of what I just complained about with Thor and with Moon Knight. But the difference that Miss Marvel does understand is if you give me characters that I love that can fill in those gaps that I'm complaining about, that can be the answer to everything. It's the same reason why, in my opinion, Suicide Squad is far superior than Wonder Woman, than all of the Batman versus Superman, because you give me a lot with the characters. And if you give me a lot with the characters, I can get on board with a lot. And Miss Marvel had the best family in anything. Yeah, I love Aunt May. I love every Aunt May, all three of them. But Kamala Khan's family was incredible. My favorite part of the show is that one scene when the brother goes up to a person who lied about his identity and he goes, "Do you even really like British Bake Off?" And his heart is so broken. And my heart was broken too. It is such a great show. It was charming. The first episode, the animation, it was like something of my dreams. It is the show I would have made if you gave me the chance to write a Miss Marvel show. And it changed from where I thought it was gonna be. Miss Marvel is a mutant. What does that mean? Like, it was very exciting in all of the things that it did, and I applaud it all the way. The very interesting thing for me is how is all of this going to fit into the movie, like the MCU world. Like, I don't see Kamala in it yet. It's going to be, for me, I know they showed footage at D23, but it's going to be strange for me to see Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, and Rambo all standing next to each other. It's going to be weird for me to see She-Hulk standing next to Captain America or whatever the next movie that she's in. I'm all for it. I can't wait to see how it happens. But for me, it does feel like two different worlds. We saw Matt Murdock in Spider-Man as Matt Murdock. We didn't see Daredevil in Spider-Man. And the decisions that they would have made for Daredevil would have been very interesting if it was in the MCU. I think that's what's exciting about it. So, I do have my issues with Phase 4. Very much so. But Disney Plus and all of these Disney Plus series are doing the job for me. And I'm here for it. Moving on to Apple TV very quickly. We're just going to talk about two shows quickly. There was a show called Suspicion that was like a British American combination show. I think it also played in BBC. It was good. It was like a fun Friday weekly show to watch. It was in a moment where I was really into all of the Apple TV shows that they were dropping. Two of them I think are in Purgatory, which I didn't get to finish. One of them is called Invasion, which I probably didn't finish because in those first, I don't know, 2 or 3 episodes that I watched, one of the characters was terrible. My brother finished it, and he told me that it gets better. So I do plan on finishing it. So Suspicion fit right into there. Then Blackbird was different because I had never heard of it, and my first hearing of it was after it had already released, and people were talking about how other shows didn't live up to how good Blackbird was. So I just started watching it based on the opinions of people who I respect when they talk about this media game, and I had no idea what it was going to be about. And it ended up being a very cool story, jail story, interesting character story, and the fact that it was based on a thing that really happened is insane, actually. So if you haven't heard about Blackbird, not like this is a synopsis show, but I do think that you should look into it. It's about this guy, son of a cop, young kid, attractive, gets ladies, drug dealer, who gets arrested, goes to jail, and there's a guy who they believe to be a serial killer. He keeps admitting to his murders, but they actually don't have the evidence on him because he's a weird guy. But he has a twin brother who's a really attractive, cool guy. So they come up with an idea to partner this one guy with the serial killer so that he can get information on him for his freedom. And it's a cool story, but it's also extra cool because it really happened. And that's nuts. So, let's get back into reading another thing that I wrote in the month of February as I was getting ready to release Manic Music Media #7. We actually have 3, 4, 5 of those that we're going to read, and those might be the last of it, I think, for the... No, that's not true. We actually have one for the film as well. So let's just get into these, because this is as we move on into the HBO Memorial section. The first show I want to talk about is Peacemaker. When I was reviewing Peacemaker in February, what I wrote was, like Boba Fett, this is another example of the beauty of streaming services. We get a movie that introduces a badass character, then just mere months later, we get a show. The downside of this one is, you, and by you, I mean James Gunn, gave us this absolutely ridiculous and out-of-pocket character that was so interesting because he was ridiculous, out of pocket, and lived in an area of gray. However, when you make a show, the main character has to be likable, at least in the mainstream side. For us to continue watching the show, we have to be into the people. That's why I stopped watching Girls halfway through. Because when I started hating every single one of the characters, it wasn't a fun show to watch. Right? That's why Breaking Bad is so damn good. Because they spend the whole time of the show trying to make the protagonist less and less good of a person. He's becoming evil, but we still like him because we love him as a character. So now we're faced with this thing where he's doing terrible things, but we don't want it to happen. Right? That's why we love Walter White, Heisenberg, Bryan Cranston. Peacemaker had to do the almost opposite, where it had to take all of these evil things about this character, and it had to explain them why, and then it had to make him get past that. Well, when he gets past that, is the character still interesting? Well, maybe if I'm really invested in it, but also there's a chance that it's not going to be. And I do think that they were able to successfully make me invested enough into it, but I do think it was a rough thing. If the show wasn't so just hilarious and over the top and crazy in a way that a James Gunn film is, I think it would have been a lot harder to digest. But it was all of those things that I just said it was. And John Cena killed it, and he was great. Moving on to Euphoria. So it looks like I wrote this after the first episode of Euphoria, so we don't really get to dive that deeply into it. I'll give you my opinion on the whole season. What I wrote in February was, I'll be real with you. It's been so long since Euphoria's been around. Though I did think the 2 standalone episodes from last year were a really creative way to keep the story going while on hiatus. But as I was saying, it's been so long. Oh, but because it's been so long, I either forgot how fast-paced and connected the show was, or I very much like the rhythm that the show has taken on to. Okay, giving my opinion now, I think the show was probably always that fast-paced and that connected. I think it had just been a while since I had watched Euphoria. I should have gone back and watched the first 2 seasons. And as I was watching the last season that premiered, I did catch glimpses of what happened before, and I went, damn, like, oh, I forgot that happened. Okay, this show has been hardcore from the beginning. There's a moment, because the final 2 episodes of Euphoria season 3 were a like kind of a 2-part episode, and when one ended and the second one and then the second one started for that week in between, there was a moment where all of America was talking about Euphoria for the first time. I think a lot of people had never watched it, had never got into it, and that was the week where everybody was like, nah, you have to watch this show. And it's understandable, just so well made, creatively, beautifully. Characters are so interesting. It's also so heartbreaking, so grounded. It finds moments of joy and beauty in really dark places. It does have a very interesting use of hip-hop, which I don't want to divulge into this too much, but I do think it's very interesting when white creators and white filmmakers write hip-hop that uses a lot of like niggas and are very much cultural stake points for us, but can be viewed differently on the outside. I don't want to dive into that too much, but I do just think that it is very interesting. There were also some characters, like Barbie's character, which I can't remember her name at the moment, who was basically not in this season, which really disappointed me. I hear that there's a lot of whatever that goes on in the back scene, has nothing to do with me. But when I think about the connection of like creators who do use that, and then those creators also being the same people that always have issues on their sets. Whatever. That's beyond me. I'm not diving into that. Euphoria, though. Incredible show. Zendaya. Incredible. The mom's incredible. Sister's incredible. Just, oh my God. Like, I could take an hour to talk about every single character on the show. The fact that the little sister who wrote the play got her real moment to shine on this season. Great. Absolutely great. Around the same time that was going on, the Righteous Gemstones was on. And, I mean, ever since Eastbound and Down and my boy, Kenny Powers, I have been the hugest Danny McBride fan. Just, everything he touches is gold. I loved Vice Principals. I will watch just about everything that he does. The team that he has assembled is great. Oh my God. Righteous Gemstones. Lil Billy. I can't remember her name right now. I have to look it up because it was just who the character was, just because I need to give them their props. And I believe I did it on a different show. Maybe prior on a Manic Music Monday. I know I did it on Instagram. But okay, the sister, Judy. Incredible. She's just so funny. BJ, her husband, just as the joke of all of the joke, as the butt of all of the jokes. Insane. Keith went to a whole different level this year, and he deserves so much more than he's getting for how far he makes the decision to go in this show. And my favorite was Valen Hall, Tiffany. Favorite character of the whole season. She's pregnant, so sweet, so funny, so dumb, played perfectly to Valen Hall. Oh, just incredible. I could not say higher things. I could not give higher praises. I can't wait for the next season. I can't wait for anything else that Danny McBride does. Because Righteous Gemstones, so good. So good. Now, the next show that I'm going to talk about, actually, before I talk about something long, I'm going to skip the next one I was going to talk about and talk about this. So, DMZ starring Rosario Dawson, based on the graphic novel. I love Rosario Dawson. She can kind of not do no bad in my eyes. I did just see that clip on Instagram earlier today from He Got Game, where she's talking to homie on the phone, and while she got another dude on her neck, and oh my God, that scene makes my skin crawl. It makes me so angry to this day. Jesus did not deserve that. Not at least like that. So, that being said, Rosario Dawson really can't do no wrong in my eyes. With that being said, I'm glad that this show was only a 4-part show. It was very, like, MTV, edgy art kind of thing. It was cool. Not memorable. Won't be something that I think about for a long time. It'll be a show that I go, oh yeah, remember that one day? And I won't even remember that it was connected to the graphic novel. It did help me remember that I love Benjamin Bratt. And I've loved Benjamin Bratt since I was a kid, with all of the work that he has done that has touched me since I was a kid. I'm going to let that stand. I'm not going to retract any of the statements that I just made. Moving on. This next show that I'm going to talk about, we're going to read what I wrote about it. But the interesting thing is, when I wrote this, I did not know that the show was canceled. And it's now canceled. That one's called Raised by Wolves. Hold on, I'm getting some. Okay, I thought I was getting some technical difficulties. I think we're good. So this show is called Raised by Wolves, and it's created by Ridley Scott. I'm pretty sure we've talked about it on this series before. Let me just read what I wrote back then. What I wrote in February was season 2 of this strange sci-fi retelling of future Bible stories, and that's the best thing I can explain with the story. I'll admit, for HBO Max, sometimes the graphics lack. That's probably the most surprising part than anything about the series. Um, but my favorite parts about the series are the scenes that make you question, what is humanity? If the androids that the show are about, if they're all programmed differently, with different programs and features that cause different evolutions, then are they not a species full of diversity, just like our own? That's the question that this show asks. That with random sci-fi creatures, it's a total Ridley Scott piece. And it works more often than not for me. It ended with this crazy biblical scene and moment that was going to lead to so much more, obviously, but then the show got canceled. So now it has a whole different meaning. Whereas if you just watch the show with those 2 seasons, I think it's going to bug you out. It might even be better as a half-told story, because since we never get a resolution, the meaning of the story is different. Interesting. I'm going to miss it. I'm also not surprised that it was canceled, but I did enjoy it. These 2 other shows, let's talk about them in combined, because they are 2 shows that not many, I don't think I've spoken to anybody else who has watched them. They are 2 shows that are very much held together by a strong couple, a male and female co-star and lead that holds the show together and takes it to new heights. Those shows are Made for Love, which, let me look up the characters for that show too, because if I'm going to speak so highly about it, let me at least know who I'm talking about, right? And these actors are very popular. Come on, there you go. Where's the cast? Give me the cast. So you'll know them. No, you didn't give me the cast. You gave me images, but I wanted the cast. All right. So yeah, I mean, we'll just talk about. So Ray Romano kills it. He's just so good in the show, and the fact that he's playing like he's not a pervert, but that's what they want you to think he is. It's sweet, it's endearing. Hazel is an asshole. She's such an asshole, but so endearing and so charming that I like her regardless. And it's almost the same for Byron Gogol. Such a Mark Zuckerberg jerk of a character, but I still found myself feeling bad for him and feeling like, well, maybe y'all deserve each other anyway. So it's interesting to see where the show is going to go. I hope it doesn't get canceled, because I really, really enjoy it. I think it's really smart. I think it's really quirky. And I think it's just, if you're into tech, almost in the way like Silicon Valley was just brought up interesting conversations about tech and interesting questions about tech without giving an opinion on it, but really just raising up like What if this happened? What if that happened? I think it's really cool. And Minx. Moving on from Made for Love. Minx was a show that all of the trailers, all of the promotion for it made me so excited about it, but nobody else was talking about it. Nobody else was thinking about it. I also think Jake Johnson is a really great actor who does a lot of really great things, but is also like kind of just a background guy too. Was he on The New Girl? Is that a thing? Am I making that up? I know he was on Let's Be Cops. Okay, he was on New Girl. So maybe he is a household name because he was on New Girl. Um, but he's very much made the transaction to actor. Sometimes I just see him like in the background of things. Like I think he was in one of the new Jurassic Parks. It's just one of these stereotypical bullshit roles. Even though I'm sure he made a lot of money for it. So shout out to him. I'm not mad at him for it, but I'm just saying. You don't see him in so much. But he's a very good. He's very good at what he does. And him partnered with Ophelia Lovebon. Ophelia Lovebon. Do I know her from anything else? She's in Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh, she's the, yeah, that character. It's like the like servant girl of the Collector, right? That's just dawning on me right now. Well, Ophelia, who played what, Nancy Prigger? Joyce Prigger. I think I had a Spanish teacher called Nancy Prager. I wonder what's going on with her. She was so mean. She got better with time. I feel bad, like just leaving it out there with people thinking she was a terrible Spanish teacher, but she did yell at the class. And if that's your story, I'm not gonna clean it up for you. You were who you were. So Ophelia Lovebon as Joyce Prigger was also so annoying, so funny, and well done. Like, I thought it was a very strong written show. I do think that a lot of these shows that represent feminism, like in a different time period, I wonder, like, was it that strong back then, or are we kind of just trying to rewrite history in a way that it should have been? But I'm cool with it. I thought it was smart. I thought it was quirky. I loved the storyline of it. I was really invested in it. Jessica Lowe, right? That's her name? Yes, Jessica Lowe. Everything she does, she is incredible. And the first thing I ever saw her in was, what was that Adam Sandler movie? Where with Drew Barrymore, where their families go together. Blended? Is that what it was called? Yes, Blended. Um, she's hilarious in that movie. And she has this really way of like playing that ditzy character, um, but also giving it so much power, giving her these characters so much power and also so much agency. And shout out to her for that because I don't think it's easy. And the other person who I want to shout out on this show is Oscar Montoya was good too. He really made me invested in his character. But Lanyon Parham, which is, I know she has like that show that got canceled that she wrote, right? Playing House, which I think she wrote with her friends. Um, she was on Veep, yes. She was so funny. She was the surprise breakout of the show because her character as just like a casual housewife who took pride in who she was, but also reaches this moment of being awoken. So good. She's hilarious. Freaking hilarious. And I think the last HBO show that we're going to dive really deep into, all right, we got two more after this. But the last HBO show that we're going to read something I had for in February will be this next show, Winning Time. Okay, so what I wrote is, I guess I have an interesting relationship because with this show, because in the last 3 months I have been sucked back into the horrible commuter lifestyle, and yes, it is terrible. Yes, it is still terrible because I'm still doing it. But one shining light I was able to encounter during my terrible commuting is watching this show on my iPhone. If you see me, you know what I'm packing. A 12.9 inch, that big ass, long ass iPad. And I'm not even watching it through that experience. I thought my days of watching anything other than YouTube videos, music videos, or trailers were over. But there was something precious about adding Winning Time to my download history, blurring out the chaotic world that was sitting beside me, and watching this show on my phone. So I forgot that I watched the Winning Time on my phone. I did not really recall that. I didn't really remember that. But I guess, yeah, this is in that time period a few months ago where I was just really adjusting to all of these new projects, and I wasn't able to watch it on a Sunday night all of the time. So Winning Time was fun. Basketball show. I hear Magic Johnson didn't approve of it, so I do always think it's interesting when you get these shows written and created by, and the people who actually live the things want nothing to do with it. It always makes me wonder, how much did they get right? How much have they gotten wrong with the show? But just in the way that it was stylized, it was just a really cool show to watch. Different mixes of medium. Uses modern songs, even though it takes place in the 70s. Also, just the way that it focused on different characters. It had moments where I was like, I can't believe this really happened, and I would have to go Google true moments of history and go, oh damn, wow, like life really is as this crazy. They're not making this up. This is really what happened in the confines of the real world that we live in. And that is so shocking, but it also made so much sense as to why this is the perfect story to make a show about, and I do think that it was. I also think, like, maybe I'm born in 91, right? So by the time I was 4 or 5 years old, basketball was the hottest thing in the world. And maybe I take for granted, or I'm just ignorant, that it wasn't always like that. That once upon a time, not everybody in the world watched basketball. And the fact that they are telling the story about how that change happened awakens a lot of things for me. It makes me recontextualize how I perceive things in life, how I perceive things that happened before me, and how fickle things are, right? Like, in my mind, some things are concrete because they've all I've ever known. But just because it's all I've ever known, and just because that's how it's always been in my lifetime, does not mean that it cannot revert to what it was before that. And we're seeing that in politics, we're seeing that all over in the world. Well, that's the one cool thing that this media world can do, is it can give me the socio-economic context of that and make it more understandable for myself. That's really cool. Moving on with HBO. So I also watched Blade Runner, Black Lotus, which was the animated series. Sometimes I just watch these animated series real quick in the background as I'm working. I enjoy them. I don't consider myself anime head. You know, I'm like into soft anime. I have Digimon tattoos. But this is the closest I get to being an anime head in that anime world. I also watched Netflix uh, Tekken Bloodline. Like I watched that, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 episodes in one day. Or actually, not even in one day. Like over the course of 2 hours at 2 o'clock in the morning, while I'm working on other things. Those shows do the job. Rounding off HBO, 3 final shows. You got We Own This City, which was a true story, kind of in the same sense of Winning Time. A true story about something that happened recently. It was them getting into the Baltimore police just, what, 5, 6 years ago, and how that whole reform happened. Jason Bernthal was in it, right? That's his name? Jason Bernthal, Punisher. Why does Jason not feel like his first name? John Bernthal. That's why, because it's not his first name. John Bernthal's in it. Did a damn good job. Um, it was cool. Cop show. Sometimes, I don't need Law and Order or 911 or Hawaii 5 or CSI or all of them. But I do understand why a good cop show is good. Like, The Wire was great. The Shield, which my boy Ryan Jeffrey put me onto when I was maybe like 20, 21 years old, and it had premiered 5 or 6 years before that. Incredible show. Absolutely incredible. So, I understand a good cop show, and that was one. It was enjoyable to the end. It had a nice mix of going back and forth in time, and I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed it. Moving on, we had Westworld. I don't want to dive so much into Westworld. I really liked it. There was a moment in this season where I was like, is this show stupid? Like, have I been watching a really dumb show for the last 3 seasons? And is all of the things that, kind of moved me emotionally just dumb? And 5 minutes later, I found out I was in the middle of a twist. And I went, oh, okay. Oh, this makes sense. But that does make me think, why did I have such little faith in it? And the reason is, I have no idea where the show's going to go. And it feels like they have no idea where it's going to go either. They're just playing out and figuring out what's cool. Which is cool. The show's great. But it also doesn't feel like there's no expiration at the end of it, right? Like, I think where we are in the world, they've killed all of the people. Not only did they basically kill all the people, but they did it 25 years earlier than when we find out that they did it. So it's like, whoa, all right, well, you already did that. Like, how much worse could it get? It's already horrible. It's already the worst. And now you have all the power in the world. What else could happen? So I do enjoy Westworld, but it when you speak about television, you'd expect that to be one of the highest spoken about shows, and not in my book. Though I like it, though I do enjoy it. Then the last HBO show we're going to talk about, which just ended a week ago, and it's maybe my favorite show of the year, is Industry. Damn it. I love this show. I love this show in the way that I love Succession. But Industry almost feels better because it's our little secret. Nobody else is watching it. But it is an unspoken gem. And I love the actors that are in it now, because I follow them, some of them on Instagram. The main character, Myla Harold, I love her as a person. I follow her on Instagram now. I want her to become the biggest actress in the world, and I feel the same about Marissa Abella. The cast of this show looks like they have so much fun and they have created such a bond together. And the fact that it's about finances and it's also about outsiders that are living in London. Talks about class, it talks about economic systems. It's like black Americans in London living with rich black American, like in London, rich foreign girls. It's just an incredible dynamic. It is written so sharp and so intelligently. And it has moments where the sex scenes are just made well. Moments where I am the happiest I can get, and then moments where I'm broken and anxious and so good. If you have not watched Industry, go watch Industry. Incredible. Incredible. Now continuing the memorial section, there was also a show called The Old Man, which was an FX Hulu show. I had never really heard about it until my brother watched it. And I was like, yeah, check this thing out. And it was damn good. Jeff Bridges killed it. Amy Brenneman, which after a while I was like, where do I know you from? Like Leftovers. Okay, I'm like, okay, I know I've seen you in a lot of things. So you have already gained my trust. But you also feel different in every series you do, which is great too. John Lithgow killed it, you know. He always plays kind of the same kind of character, but then he puts it in, it's put in different circumstances and it gets a different reaction. And then Alia Shawkat, did I say her name right? I know I've seen her in like a bunch of those other, she has that show Search Party, yeah, she was in Whip It. Oh, she's from Arrested Development too. Okay, so I haven't seen that many things that she's done, but she's pretty damn good too. An interesting thing is like almost how she looked was such a big part of the show. Just the looks that she made. She was very strong in that. And then also to get into the relationship between Dan and Zoe, which was with Jeff Bridges and Amy Brenneman, like for them as two older people to be placed in this situation together, the storyline did not go where I expected it to go. But at the same time, I had no idea where the storyline was going to go the whole time, so I was there for the ride. You know, almost, that's maybe how I should be experiencing Westworld. But Westworld has also so much, you know, legacy that they've already developed that now I expect something of it. The Old Man, I had no idea what to expect. I'm like, is this based on a book? Is this based just somebody's idea? I don't know. But it was good. But it was good, and like I said, it didn't go where I expected it to go. And I give it props for that. And I see it is based on a book by Thomas Perry, The Old Man. So, cool. Good series. Like, I can't complain about good content that's enjoyable, entertaining, not offensive, at least to like my taste in aesthetics. And then I think the last show that we're talking about in this memorial section in general, and you know, as I'm looking through just to see other things I'm missing, I'm realizing that Resident Evil is also missing from this list. But Resident Evil was so terrible and nothing that anybody wanted. But I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to waste my time. I feel like I've already been negative enough on this episode, and I don't want to do it anymore. The last show I'm going to talk about is an incredible show. Maybe the best superhero show on television. Maybe one of the craziest shows on television. But also one of the most fun shows on television. That also not only lives up to its expectations, but constantly keeps raising its expectations. And that is The Boys on Prime Video. Do I have to say anything about it? Like, you've heard about it. It is nuts. There are scenes in this season that I'm like, that is crazy. Some of them is because it's bodies blowing up, people jumping into each other's bodies, orgies happening. And sometimes it's just because Butcher is an asshole and he's yelling at a little kid. And you're like, what are you doing, Butcher? Stop doing that shit. Great storyline. Really pushing the limits. Shout out for Prime for allowing it to happen. Shout out to the crew. Who is it? Seth Rogen, but who else is that Eric Kripke? Is that the person who's working on The Boys? Yeah, right, it's Eric Kripke. Like, shout out to him. Killed it. He's killing it every season, and I can't wait to see where it's gonna go. Jensen killed it this season. Anthony Starr, I feel bad. Anthony Starr, I feel bad because he's so good as Homelander that I don't know if I'll ever be able to see him in anything else, because for the rest of his life, he may be Homelander to me. Okay, if he cuts his hair and it looks different, he was in Without a Paddle. He's been acting for that long. Oh, shit. And he's from New Zealand? I didn't know any of these things. Tony Starr. Alright. But he's the man. Anthony Starr was that good. Carl Urban. Such an asshole. Like, he's so good at Butcher that I don't know if I can ever see him as not an asshole either. So good. Jack Quaid kills it. Annie, Erin Moriarty, amazing. Karen Fukuhiro, Kimiko is, I love you, Kimiko. I love you, Kimiko. Jensen killed it. And then where's my boy Frenchie? Tomed Copon. Him and Mother's Milk. And you know what? I even felt bad for A-Train a little bit this season. The boys have just been knocking it out the box. Give you all the props in the world for that. And I think that wraps up our memorial section. It does. So next we have some films to talk about, and we'll go over the Purgatory section as well. I'll be right back on this Manic Music Media Monday. It's a Manic Music Monday. Mm-hmm. No, 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 don't get. No, 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 bumping new poppy, don't get. Yeah, you don't get. It's a Manic Music Monday. Oh, it's a music. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was really unnecessary. We had a good memorial section, right? We talked about the shows that we're watching on a weekly basis. We had a nice little intro. We got into the watch list of things. Like I said, I've been a little bit more negative on this than I usually am. And maybe that's just because it's been a few months and I just didn't, not include all of the things that I wasn't crazy about. Maybe I do better at that normally. Maybe not. But with that being said, uh, let's get into the shows that are in purgatory that I started watching that I, for one reason or another, have not finished, but also see myself struggling to finish a little bit. The first one we're going to talk about is called The Bear, which is an FX show about a kitchen and cooking. I think I watched the first episode. Maybe I watched the first two episodes. It was great. It was really good. It was really enjoyable. I have nothing negative to say about it. The day that I started watching it, I just think I had some extra time. So I was like, yeah, throw that on. But really, I don't have the time. With everything else that I've already mentioned it, like when I get another half an hour or so, I'll make sure I'll get it in. But right now, I'm just not in a period where I can really turn everything off and just watch things. I didn't think I was going to be able to do it with Star Wars Andor. I was able to do it this week, and I probably didn't do some things that I should have done because of it. So I do think I'm going to finish it. I just don't know when. Umbrella Academy. So I went to go watch Umbrella Academy season 3, and I realized, why can't I remember how season 2 ended? Like, I know people talk about it like it's a big deal, but why can't I remember it? And then I remembered the reason is because I didn't finish season 2. So then I went back and tried to finish season 2, and I remembered why I stopped watching it. Ugh, it's just, so the episode that I like watched, I think probably like 3 or 4 times at this moment now, because I always just try to get back into it. It's like the episode where they're basically recreating like a Civil War sit-in, and my issue with it is just that I just don't think the show has like warranted the ability to do that with me. Like, I'm like, how did the show that was about this one thing turn into this? I I think I don't want to go through those types of things on this show. And because of that, and because I don't think it warrants it, but has done it already, it's also the same with the Vietnam War aspect of it. I just really have no interest or intrigue in it anymore. And I know season 2 ends crazy, and I hear season 3 ends crazy too. And I do want to know what happens, and I refuse to just find out what the spoilers are, but I also don't know when and if I will ever finish the show. Going on with Slow Horses on Apple TV, which is another cop show starring Gary Oldman. Um, I liked it. I think it suffers, and I'll also include Reacher, the Prime Video show about Jack Reacher. Remember that Tom Cruise movie? Well, it's another show about that guy, um, starring the guy from Titans. I like both of the shows. Reacher's better than I thought it was gonna be because this guy's kind of a nice guy, but also fucks people up, which I think is really cool. But I just watched them when I had some extra time, and now that I don't have extra time, I don't think I'll be able to finish them. Now, these next two shows, actually, no, let me leave this one all on its own. All of Us Are Dead, which is an incredible Netflix zombie, I want to say Korean show that takes place in a high school. It's really good. It's really compelling. My only issue with it is that the episodes are so long. Every episode's like an hour and 20 minutes long, and it's a 13 episode season. So I love it. If it was happening on a weekly basis, I'd be watching it every week. Like it's probably not that different than House of the Dragon in that sense, but I just don't have the time for it. It's so good, and I can't wait to finish it. I'm like on episode 9 or episode 10. I just, yeah, I don't know when I'm gonna get to it, but I want to get to it. But I need like a good 5 hours just to finish it. Then you have Somebody Somewhere, which is an HBO show. I always give HBO show chances because they're almost always on point. This one, the first episode was great. I just don't have the time for it, and I'm not that invested in it. But I may finish it one day. Now, these next two shows, The Witcher, which we all know The Witcher, right? Pass a coin to your Witcher. Oh, that is plenty. Your alley of plenty. Oh, toss a coin to your Witcher. The fact that they really have a song. So good. Witcher came out, I think, in December while I was in Mexico. So I didn't have the time then. And it's another one of those shows that I kind of have to like shut down and really invest and give all of my time and energy into it. And because I haven't done that, I don't know when I'm going to finish it. I actually forgot that I didn't finish it up until this week when I was putting all of this together. And I'm like, damn, I really need to finish that. I also heard that the next season is dropping in the summer. The Netflix To Doom event was this week. To Doom! So ridiculous. The To Doom event was this week. So it may be one of those shows that I just catch up on and watch it all together once I know it's 2 weeks from the release date of the next one. Now, so Station 11 is also similar to that. Station 11 is a really good apocalyptic show. But instead of focusing on zombies or people who want to kill each other, it's about theater. And it's about the preserving art and where that goes. And I started watching it while I was in Mexico on vacation, and I loved it. I felt it was one of those shows that I liked it so much that I feel like I had to turn everything off to watch it. And because of that, when I got back from Mexico, I had not finished it. But I believe it came out at the end of last year. But it is one of the most inventive and different shows that I've experienced in the last year. Now, this next show, which is an HBO show called Tokyo Vice, it is about, and this one's based on a true story too. It's about a white guy who goes to Japan and joins a Japanese theater as a journalist. Japanese newspaper as a journalist. Now, it's very uncommon for that to happen. It's very rare. My issue with it is that even though it's based on a true story, it's a white guy who's going to Japan and telling Japanese people what they should do and how they should do it. Granted, he's at the bottom of the totem pole, but he's breaking all of these rules to try to do his thing to tell an interesting story. But in a way, I'm like, how are you not a culture vulture? Like, expose your own people. You go to somewhere else, you live in their land to expose them. And I think that the author is now back in the, I don't know. Maybe I didn't watch enough of it to give it a chance, but I was just turned off by the idea of it. So I think I only watched the first or two episodes of it. It's another one that I only watched when I had extra time. And I don't know if I'll have the extra time to watch that again. But I was turned off by the idea of it, for sure. Now, the last two shows in Purgatory, one of them is called Invasion, which I mentioned before. There was a husband of one of the characters that was an unbearable piece of shit on this show. To the point that I was like, this guy is such a piece of shit that nobody exists in the world like this. Like, this is not a well written character. As I mentioned earlier, my brother said that it gets better, but I gotta see it for myself. So, I believe there's gonna be a season 2. It might be one of those shows like The Witcher that I only finish when we get to the next season. And then finally, the last show on my Purgatory, I watched the first 2 episodes of, and they were damn killer. And I was like, yo, this show's going somewhere. Since I've been told, or you could see the accolades of it, it's been considered like one of the best shows on television for the year. It's called Severance. And just the concept of it is you go to your job and basically you sever your work life from your regular life, and they're completely separate. So once you leave the job, you don't know what happened, and when you're there, you don't remember what happened. And the reason why the main character does it is because his wife is dead. But I know there are some plots and some twists and turns that this show is gonna get to. I think only watching the first 2 episodes, I already saw one of the big twists, and I'm like, where the hell is this gonna go? I also, every once in a while when I'm scrolling through on YouTube, I see like things that you didn't catch from Severance. So now I know there's so much going on in the context and the details of it. I didn't get that far in it. But that's actually, out of probably all of the shows in Purgatory, the one that and All of Us Are Dead, just because I invested so much time into All of Us Are Dead, are probably the shows that are going to get the most energy from me. Guys, so we are about an hour and a half in to the show. I'm looking at how much has to get done for the film list. How much has to get done for the specials. And because we did not even include music in this because I know it was going to be so big, I think I've just decided that we're going to split this episode into 2. So, we went through the Manic Media Music section, we went through the current series, we went through the Memorial section, and we went through the Purgatory section. Yes, we made it through. We are back. This is going to be Manic Music Media Monday 7.1. And then we're going to do a Manic Music Media Monday 7.2, where we get into the films, we get into the specials, and we get into some music. I can really dive into all of those things. If you've made it this far, thank you for tuning in to Manic Music Media Monday. I consume all of these things. All of these things have an impact on not only the work that I create, but on my perspective on creation and what can be done. And that's why I do think it's important for me to channel all of this knowledge, all of this experience into something. It also becomes a bit of a time capsule for where I am at this stage of my life, in contrast to where life is at this stage, right? So, well, I just did right, like one of those like old interview actor people, right? And that's interesting for me. I also just realized, and we'll get into this quickly, one thing that didn't get mentioned in the memorial section is Jesus and Mero is no longer a show because Jesus and Mero broke up. And it's been maybe a month or two since the news have come out. When the news first came out, it was shocking. I know, I kind of vaguely know some people who work at the show through Twitter. So immediately I went to their pages because I'm like, what did I miss? And it looked like it was a shock and a surprise to all of us. And in the time since, we haven't heard that much information. But Meryl has done a few interviews. Deezus hosted the Jimmy Kimmel Fallon show, Jimmy Kimmel show, whatever. And it just seemed like they grew apart and they weren't in the same place anymore. And maybe there were issues creatively, maybe there was issues with the manager, but it is one of those things that you're like, damn, like we not that we took you for granted, but like we just accepted, like, all right, we have a duo, and now that the duo is separated, you're like, damn, we were part of that. You feel like you got broken up with too, and I think it's a Keenan and Kel moment. You don't have those moments that often. Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, where you're invested in two people because you really think that they work together well as a team. And that's that. So, next week on Manic Music Monday, just like we started this episode asking, where were we? We're going to